The Trump administration is giving the Saudi monarchy all the time in the world to investigate the details about the Khashoggi murder.
We're used to our houses being flooded every time it rains. And when it happens, we act immediately.
Hello, my name is Stanley Heller. Welcome to The Struggle. The Struggle is shown on over 30 cable stations from Maine to New York City. This graphic is right up on our website, thestruggle.org. The Trump administration is giving the Saudi monarchy all the time in the world to investigate the details about the Khashoggi murder. And Congress seems to be going along. Turkish sources say there was a 15-member hit team that came to Istanbul, did the murder, and then departed. The Saudi government, after coming up with story after story, finally admitted there was a premeditated plot to kill Khashoggi and said it arrested 18 people. And weeks later, that's all we know. Incredibly, the Saudi authorities have not released the names of the people they say they arrested. Who are these people? Are they still in custody? Are they out on bail? Reportedly, one of the suspects, Mishal Saad al-Bostani, suffered a fatal road accident. Have any of the others met a similar untimely fate? What happened to Khashoggi's body? Where are the remains? What about the supposed Turkish accomplice who disposed of the body? Who is he? Has he been arrested? Khashoggi was a U.S. resident and a famous reporter. Why aren't U.S. political leaders pressing the Saudis in public every day to answer these obvious questions? And why isn't the corporate media also demanding answers? We urge you to share this graphic up on social media. In the wake of the Khashoggi murder, there's enormous interest in the University of New Haven's ties with the Saudi Police College in Riyadh. UNH is actually housed in West Haven, Connecticut. As far as we can tell, UNH is the only U.S. college directly helping the Saudi regime police programs. There'll be a public meeting on Thursday, November 8th in West Haven at its library on Elm Street at 4 p.m., sponsored by our Middle East Crisis Committee. Open to all. And this item, there's a petition going around to call on the city of Washington to rename the street in front of the Saudi embassy Jamal Khashoggi Way. Sounds like a great idea. Remember when the Shah of Iran was toppled, the revolutionaries renamed the street in front of the British embassy after the Irish patriot Bobby Sands. We'll link. The group Voices for Creative Nonviolence is having demonstrations. This item about the Saudis concerns their war against Yemenis. Just a week ago, the New York Times used this image of a starving girl to dramatize the incredible suffering by millions inside of Yemen. Now this little girl is dead. The group Voices for Creative Nonviolence is having demonstrations for Yemen in front of the United Nations in New York, starting Election Day, the 6th of November, and going on till the 8th. Go to their website for details. Here's some video of the migrant caravan that some politicians are claiming is about to invade the USA. True, they're about 1,000 miles away and may take a month or more to get to the border. That this unarmed crowd is a threat is laughable. Videos sometimes make this look like a sea of humanity, but the numbers are about 7,000. Some high school sporting events are larger. There's also the charge that there are gang members and Middle Easterners hiding in the crowd. Blogger Richard Silverstein responds, "If you were a Middle Eastern terrorist or an M13 gang member, wouldn't you have easier and quicker ways of entering the U.S. than trekking in a 1,000-mile caravan to the U.S. border? Just saying." Following Israel's criminal policy, the president has said that anyone throwing rocks should be treated as if they had a gun. His words apparently inspired the Nigerian army to shoot people dead in a rally of 1,000 people, where a couple of them threw rocks. The Twitter account of the Nigerian army said as much.
21 youth plaintiffs who basically assert that the government has perpetuated a fossil fuel-based energy system that threatens their constitutional rights to life, liberty, and property in the future.
There's a landmark court suit that was supposed to start its trial this week. It was a claim by young people that they had a right to grow up in a world with a climate friendly to human life. But the government got the Supreme Court to stay the trial for the moment. There were protests in a number of cities, including New Haven. Paul, the demonstration is breaking up now. Could you explain its purpose?
Today we gathered to support the 21 youth plaintiffs in the case Juliana versus the United States. Unfortunately, the case was delayed due to a stay in the Supreme Court. It was scheduled to start today, but it did not. But there are rallies happening all across the United States, and we wanted to stand in solidarity with those other rallies and with the youth plaintiffs themselves.
No, stay doesn't mean it's canceled. What is a stay?
A stay means that the Supreme Court is putting the case on hold while it reviews more information to see if it should go to trial.
So what is the case all about?
This case is a piece of climate change litigation that specifically involves 21 youth plaintiffs who basically assert that the government has perpetuated a fossil fuel-based energy system that threatens their constitutional rights to life, liberty, and property in the future based on the impacts of climate change that results from the overuse of fossil fuels.
They're not taking the fossil fuel companies to court. It's the government itself, the federal government.
Right. In this case, they're not suing the fossil fuel companies, they're suing the federal government because the federal government has a responsibility to its citizens to protect public trust resources for everyone's use. And in this case, the federal government has failed to live up to that responsibility, and the impacts that these youth are feeling from climate change and will feel into the future are the result of that lack of responsibility on the behalf of the government.
Now, I recall Bill McKibben and others saying, why didn't Obama settle in the last weeks or months of his administration? That would have been something if he had settled this rather than... Did he fight it in court? Did the Obama administration fight it?
Obama administration fought this case in court, ardently in fact, and I definitely can't speak for why the Obama administration may have chosen not to settle, but there may have been many strategic reasons. I know that the Obama administration was much more sympathetic to the climate change movement than the current administration, but the past is what has occurred, so.
And at what level of court is it?
Right now the case is at the district court level, but the stay has been appealed all the way to the Supreme Court level. So the trial actually hasn't started yet. The stay that's being heard by the Supreme Court is a pretrial motion that's happening before the trial even begins. And the decision by the Supreme Court will determine whether the case can go to trial at the district level or not.
And what are the plaintiffs asking? What do they want as a remedy?
The plaintiffs are asking for the federal government to first of all, admit culpability in perpetuating a fossil fuel-based energy system that threatened their rights. And then second of all, to implement a climate change recovery plan throughout all levels of the government, all branches of the government at the federal level, that will allow for climate change to be stopped, or at least to allow its worst impacts not to be felt. And we recognize that this is a global problem that requires a global solution, but the United States is a crucial factor in that global solution. And as of now, it's not only at a standstill, it's backtracking on all of these issues. And we need that to change as fast as possible.
If people are interested in getting in touch with organizations, groups that are working on this issue, is there a website or an email?
For this case in particular, you can go to ourchildrenstrust.com to learn more about the plaintiffs and to see the other work that the organization is doing. I'd heavily encourage donating to that organization if you feel passionate about this issue, because in addition to this federal case, the organization is filing cases in many states throughout the country and even has a branch of its organization working on taking these kinds of atmospheric trust litigation strategies to other countries. And in fact, they've had a lot of success in helping move these arguments to successful court cases in other countries, including Colombia, that just had a successful Supreme Court case affirming the same kinds of rights that these plaintiffs are asserting for themselves in the United States.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
The day after the synagogue massacre, the weekly peace vigil in New Haven focused its message on two things: showing solidarity with Jews and denouncing the river of hate against immigrants and Muslims and Jews coming from the highest places. Now to Palestine. The Trump administration has cut $500 million in the U.S. donation to the United Nations for programs like UNWRA that helps feed 1 million or more Palestinians in Gaza. 34 senators have sent a letter criticizing this cruelty. Apparently the rest are willing to have the Palestinians starve. We'll link to the letter on thestruggle.org. Check to see where your senator stands. Mohamed Eid is a Palestinian from Rafah in the Gaza Strip. He recently spoke at the Palestinian Museum US in Woodbridge, Connecticut. He works for UNWRA, the UN agency helping refugees. We'll have the first part of his talk on the program today.
So for those of you who are not familiar with the geographical context of this area, this is what is called, or what is normally referred to as, Palestine, Israel. Sorry. So the area of that has dark green color, which is called West Bank and East Jerusalem, this is a Palestinian territory. And it's separated by the kind of yellow-brown area, which is Israel. And then in the south, down there, is Gaza Strip. And it's also Palestinian territory. Palestinian territory in total is less than 20% of the whole land. And the Israeli territory is more than 80%. Zooming down to Gaza Strip in the south, Gaza Strip is simply 8 refugee camps. This is how it's categorized by the United Nations. I come from the refugee camp down in the south. It's called Rafah Refugee Camp. It's over here. It's by the Egyptian borders, by Sinai Desert. And on the southern part, this pink area, it's all buffer zone. It's a no-man's zone. During rise of conflict, it extends to be 3 kilometers. Probably would be in feet, something like maybe 9,000 feet of no-man's zone. So this is where I grew up, in Rafah Refugee Camp, a very nice, lovely area. Growing up in that context, I got used to many things, and today I'll be sharing with you the things I used to, the things I grow up seeing every day. Some of them have become very normal to me that I get surprised when I tell my friends, and they will maybe feel surprised, they feel shocked when I share these things. Some things I still feel it's not normal. This is something no one should get used to. So today I'll take this chance and share my story with you, and we'll talk to you about my life growing up, working for the UNWRA, then leaving Gaza Strip and coming to the United States, and then what are my dreams and hopes, what I'll be doing next, and then I'll be happy to take your questions. So this is a glimpse of the refugee camp. One of the things I got used to it is that we have lack of space. We're just crammed into a very small place, very small area. So houses, we don't have city planning. Houses are just built next to each other. The roads are very narrow. It can get so narrow that it's hard even to move furniture into a house. So furniture would fit through some roads and some streets, but not all the roads and the paths. When we grow up, we're used to people doing their best, people having doing all the efforts to survive in a struggling context, in a very harsh context. So we're used to people having a sort of a free market. We would just walk down the streets and people would be selling everything, they will be buying things, nothing will be organized, nothing will be planned, life is easy, it has its own taste. We're used to call adults, we're used to call women aunts, and we're used to call men uncles. And adults would call children son and daughter. I always wondered, why do we have that sort of very close social relationships and bonds? But by the time when I grow up, I realized that this is how people survive in very harsh and aggressive contexts. One of the nice memories I had when I was young was going for the food package at the UNWRA food station, or a refugee center. And the food package is very similar most of the time. It doesn't change very much. It's the same basic thing. The food package would include, starting from the bottom, the rice, and then the chickpeas, which is used to make hummus, and then the lentils, and then at the top is sugar. And over there you can see some oil by the guy. And the most important part of the food package is flour. We have been the UNWRA have been delivering sacks of flour for people. It's a very important thing, and that's how we had this culture of baking. I would wake up every morning on the smell of baked bread in my house, because women back in Palestine, they start baking first thing in the morning. My mom would do something that is called managish, and I advise all of you to try this very delicious meal. Managish is simply, we bring the dough, it's like pizza dough, and we get some za'atar. You can buy it in any international food shop. I'm sure you can find it anywhere else also. And we mix the za'atar with olive oil. It gets like a paste, and then we spread that paste on the dough, and then we bake it. I used to have that for school even. We used to have it for breakfast, for dinner, as snacks. My mom would give me that for school for all my life going to school. It's like jelly and peanut butter here. So I would have za'atar, za'atar managish. My grandma used to say to me, za'atar makes people smart. It has something, it has impact on the brain. It makes you smart. All the smart people eat za'atar. And the reason I'm quoting my grandma back there, a grandma would be some sort of a research published by Harvard, sort of saying. She has survived so long, she's been there, she's been around before us, there's no search engines, no Google, so when my grandma says things, I take it for granted. School, speaking about school, I got used since I was young that schools are very crowded, and we always have, as I mentioned, lack of space. The thing I liked about school, although being crowded, is the teachers. We had very nice and very kind teachers. They weren't only teachers, they were counselors, they were advisors, they were everything. They meant lots of and many things for us. By the end of the day, my teacher would go to the market, and he will be meeting my father doing the shopping, or doing the grocery, and then my father comes back home and he says, I met your teacher. So he meets him on a daily basis, and he's always updated with everything. Sometimes I call my teacher teacher, and sometimes I call him uncle. It was a very nice atmosphere. That education system that education system I had was UNWRA education system. It was provided for refugees in refugee camp from grade 1 to grade 9. If it wasn't for the UNWRA education facilities, my father wouldn't have afforded to give me an education. And actually there wasn't any kind of other schooling system besides the UNWRA. We used to work hard, we used to study, we didn't have all the desks and the luxurious equipment and tools. So we would study on the stairs, do the homework, on the playground. We would make any place a studying area. One of the nice things I used to have when I was young was the dream bag. The dream bag is basically some of the gifts that the UNWRA used to give to students each semester or each year. By the end of each year, it depends on the fund, for making high achievements in the final exams. And those dream bags, they come from Japan. And they're so special, they're only given to 3 students in each class out of 60 students. And I would always take one. I always had one, I collect them, and you wouldn't imagine the happiness of going back home, having this dream bag being shipped to the refugee camp directly from Japan. And I open it, and I can't just describe the happiness of taking out things that have been saved by a Japanese child who has been saving for so long, so many special things, and then sending it to a Palestinian student. That would include notebooks, it would include crayons or coloring pencils, would include a letter. He would write something in English, and then I'd have my father or some friend translate it to me. It will have lots of things, and it was amazing. These days they still deliver these dream bags, but they deliver to more vulnerable students and those who've been through shocking experiences. They were nice. My mom promised me that every time I will make high achievement at school, she will give me zagruta when I go back home. Do you all know what is the zagruta? It's the way the old women cheer you. Is that your way of making me do zagruta? You say you don't know it. Okay. Well, the zagruta is the way women cheer back in Palestine. They basically put the right hand over their mouth, and they do something like that. And you see, when I do that, my sound gets louder. So it's like simple physics. This is how you make your sound louder. They were smart. They were eating lots of za'atar. So it's the same as you would do in the States when you would say "hoo," but except they would be moving their tongues to both sides, to the right and left. Please join me. Let's all do it together and try. So put your hand like that and say. That's amazing. Well, the thing is that men don't do that back home. It's only women. I didn't say that. I didn't mention that. Hopefully my father wouldn't be watching this. He would be disappointed with me. If he does that, I'm sorry. I hope the electricity is off in Gaza Strip. I'm sure it is. So moving on. Schools have developed since then, and they have changed. They became really amazing, and the UNWRA has a very intense in-service and development policy. Every year there is something new happening. I just left the UNWRA last year. I got unpaid leave and left the UNWRA. I came here, and when I talk with my friends, they're already speaking different terms. They're already talking different language. All of them has already committed to some internal training programs. It's just amazing, the intensity of development and the dedication the organization has for its mission. For example, when we were young, we didn't have this strategies of teaching children with games. All of that has been developed recently after the conflict and the wars in a way of rehabilitating young children who've been exposed to traumas. One of the things I got used to since I was young is that there is always a crisis, there is always something happen, and we never see them as a crisis. We just see them as a way of unexpected thing, and we go party when something like that happens. We're used to our houses being flooded every time it rains, and when it happens, we act immediately. We take our stuff, what is left or what is left dry, and we leave immediately. Sometimes it's too late, and we need help to leave. We go to the UNWRA schools, and I just loved when I was young to go to the UNWRA schools with my family. It's imagine how would it feel like you go to school, but you're not going there to study, you're not going there to do all the homework and all the work, but you're going with your family. When I was a child, I never saw that as a problem. On the other side, I enjoyed it. When I grew up, I started feeling bad about it. People come to the UNWRA schools because this is the only shelters that would host civilians. Of course, the UNWRA would provide them with aid and support. Among the other things I got used to it is that I would spend the night under shooting and bombing, and I would wake up in the morning, walk outside of my home on people shouting on us to leave the home, and I would see a bulldozer progressing through the camp streets and coming towards my house. I would be watching him until it gets very close. I become very certain that my house will not make it, and then I leave with my family. The roads were very narrow, so they would just drive their way through the houses and knock them down. People would leave immediately, take anything they can save with them. Sometimes we would take, if we're having a long walk, people would try to help and provide us with carts that is dragged by donkeys. I have a friend who sarcastically calls it the Cadillac. So when the military operation ends or finishes, and sometimes it's so intense, we leave immediately. There is aerial bombing, there is airstrikes, and so people don't check on everyone. They just leave immediately, and then they discover that they have missed someone. We get back immediately. We start looking for people mainly. We start shouting for them, we're calling for them, and most of the time they come back to us, they answer us.
That's our program for today. See you next week at this time. I'm Stanley Heller for The Struggle.